Manzeel Ahmed is a second-year college student with a passion for mechanical engineering, concurrently pursuing entrepreneurship as an affiliate marketer and promoting a book aimed at addressing societal issues. And Manzeel is with us here. How are you today?
I'm good.
So, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and your kind of background, really?
I first moved into the United States at the year of 2010, and I've basically just lived here for almost my entire life. So as I grew up, I just saw so many different cultural differences between how I was raised and the people around here. And I also even though I'm interested in mechanical engineering, I always had a strong interest in philosophy and the humanitarian side of things. And I also read up on a lot of laws, and I saw so many different contradictions. And after what happened in January 6th, that was just that final push that finally got me started on building up my framework.
Well, you've written a book called How Amending the US Constitution in This Manner Will Solve America's Basic Problems. So what drove you to address these critical societal issues?
If you go into section 1 where I talk about healthcare, I mean, obviously you've read all of this. Here, one of the things to understand is whenever you go into ER, it's not free of cost. They'll do the treatment, but whenever you come back home, you could be slapped with at least a $30,000 bill. That's enough to buy a car.
Yes.
This ain't like the European Union or even England, where you have a welfare capitalism.
Yes.
You actually have to pay for the actual treatment, and people have to decide oftentimes between their house and their treatment, which is why a lot of times my dad recently had his nose, one of his bones got misaligned, and the doctor, and if he had shown up a little bit earlier, he would have been able to just move it back into place and it would have been fixed, but it got misaligned and it's now stuck there, so he had to actually break it and actually put it back. So he said the better thing is just just to go and live with it. That's just one of the examples of the horrors of the US healthcare system. It's a joke. And another one of the things is you don't have access to higher quality treatment. I remember when I remember my parents talking about this when I was back in Bangladesh, and when I was born, I was dying in my mom's womb because there was preeclampsia and the cord got wrapped around my neck. I was dying, and I was born with jaundice. Whereas my little brother, when they brought him out, it took them 2 tries. They first cut my mom's belly wrong, then they did it again, and then we even asked them later on to give us. My mom even wanted her access to the placenta and stuff, but they just didn't give us any information or anything like that. It's just really weird how the healthcare here works. So that's just one of the personal things that got me to get into section 1 of where I wrote. And then when you're working, you have part of your paycheck that's just being deducted, and the healthcare is just really bad. It's just so bad.
Your book not only identifies these injustices, of course, but it also provides some solutions. So what solutions do you have for healthcare, but just generally as well? What kind of solutions and issues do you tackle?
Well, since you've read my book, I mean, it basically addresses everything. It's a game changer. But one of the things I put in is if you're the one who's working, the government should fully subsidize your healthcare and everything. This way, the companies don't have to do it, because companies, they pass on that additional cost to the people, and you don't have your paycheck deducted and things like that. And in Section 1, even though that's what Section 1 was about as I first started writing this, I started also expanding Section 1 other parts of my framework to include other things. So like over here in the United States, like you can't believe this, like if you're like a cashier or if you're working at a bank, you have to stand the entire time.
Wow.
And my mom, she's a diabetic, and her blood sugar just goes up like this when she's like stressed. And like I'm kind of like to blame sometimes, but like can you imagine having to stand the entire time when you work?
Yeah.
And that's just like one of the things that that I address, because like, you know, in Europe and the rest of the world, even some third world countries like even Bangladesh, they're just sitting down and then they're just serving. And I'm like, what is this here in the US? People have knee problems, and like people here are just so overly medicated. This is just crazy.
And what do you think sets your proposed solutions apart from other approaches to societal issues?
One of the differences here is like, unlike say like Obamacare, where you have to like pay these extensive deductibles and you're even forced to pay taxes on it, mine has like, you don't have to pay a deductible on this. You don't have to, this isn't going to be like taxed straight out of your paycheck. And even like, and obviously you still need to finance this, by the way. So what I end up doing is like, I just propose a very different tax structure if you go straight down to Section 6, whereas instead of like taxing your income, you end up taxing a person's savings instead. So every year you take just 20% of what you've saved up, and that just becomes your taxes paid. Or if you have like equity, you just pay 20% of that instead of just like paying, instead of your income being just ripped off and not being able to use it to pay expenses and build it up. And one of my philosophy here is like the worldwide economy, like it runs on debt. It just basically, people have more debt than equity. You don't. That's not a sustainable economy model. It's only a matter of time when the bubble just bursts. So I just created a completely different solution. Like if you go into banking, like instead of charging people interests, what the bank can do is they can do like a profit and loss sharing. So if you profit, they profit, or they can have some like ownership of your company. And so if your share price goes up, they get to cash out on that. So instead of charging people interests, which just, you have this thing called an amortization table, which is, you think you're paying 4% of your loan. You're not paying 4% of your loan, by the way. Yeah. That's just 4% of every payment that just compounded monthly until you get to the end of your loan. So it's kind of like in a way theft. So by making these changes, you end up creating a much better economy, and the banks are no longer just giving out loans to just any random people. You just have so this overall just makes people just a lot wealthier just from that alone. And when we get rid of this economic model of people just being in debt, you end up creating a kind of economy where people can afford to buy more things and actually take care of themselves.
You mentioned about taxing people's savings. It could be argued that that's a bad idea because it puts people off saving, which we kind of want people to save a lot of the time.
Thing is, like, you're going to pay taxes just like anyways, so I would say it's more equitable to tax one's savings. So because imagine this. So because in America, people barely have any savings, by the way. So if you just have only $1 in savings, you're only paying just 20 cents in taxes. Versus if you're earning $15 every hour, $7 is just being taken out just like that. Whereas if you just pay off all your expenses, if you're taxing savings after, you have to understand, we're taxing you after you've spent after expenses. So you get to keep your money, and then after you've paid everything you needed to, it's the money that accumulates at the end of the year we just tax at 20% on that. That's just ridiculously low taxes when you think about it.
Yeah.
No sales tax, not and I also made sure that if you're going to impose any additional taxes, we all better ratify it. And that includes territories. Because Puerto Rico, for instance, they're not a state. They are not represented. So I made sure that if you're going to impose additional taxes, you better have everybody's ratification, and it's got to be temporary, and it has to have a very specific purpose of why you're spending that money.
And often people feel overwhelmed by the scale of societal problems. So how does your book encourage individuals to take meaningful steps towards change?
My book mainly it's just, when I first started this, it was just a framework. But then when people started getting the wrong ideas, especially when you look into section 3 and 5, 5 actually wasn't even there at the time, but when people started getting the wrong idea, then I realized I need to put an explanation so that people don't get the wrong idea about me or what I'm going for. So once I started putting explanations, this started to become more like an article. So where I just basically ended up explaining like why this would end up being like the best solution. And as for like encouraging people, I guess in my book where I kind of explain like some of my personal motivations, in many ways I make it very clear that I'm not some kind of a hedonist or anything like that, but I kind of encourage people like, hey, you should try to be responsible and try to be committed to other people, like especially when it comes to your like private matters and stuff. So that's just kind of like one of the ways where I encourage people, because like right before this interview, I even read Carrie Gress's book. It's the title is The End of Woman, and she kind of explains everything. She kind of debunks an ideology that people think that is supposed to help people, especially particular gender, but you end up realizing, whoa, they started with the wrong questions and we ended up with this, man.
Yeah. Is there any message or impact that you hope readers will get from the book?
One of the things that I hope is just like, especially when you see with the partisan, especially with divide, and especially now that I know who the real enemies are. So like, especially with the elites constantly going around making people feel hopeless, the idea is like people now have a framework in their hands. Like imagine protesting, think of it like going to a negotiating table and you're empty-handed. When you protest and you don't have a framework, the politicians, they have all the power. But now when you have a framework, you can go up to them and be like, no, you got to write it like this.
Yeah.
You got to write it like this. So this is actually empowering people, because now you have an idea, something that people can actually unify around. So this is like one of the biggest ways you can empower people, because like you can't be swindled anymore. You can't be like cheated, because now you have this framework, and if someone ends up creating a bill that's different, like, wait a minute, why? What did you just do there?
You are also working on children learning reading, so what can you tell us about that?
Well, first of all, when I first started this journey of being an affiliate marketer, I actually like watched an ad on YouTube and I realized, whoa, this is actually a great way to actually make money. So then I ended up forming my LLC and get all the paperwork done. So I went into a ClickBank. They have all these kind of products. So I just chose children learning reading because I thought like it just spoke to my heart, and I just felt like for once this might be a product that people might actually like need, versus like the ones, all this merchandise that people don't need but you still sell that off. So I just liked the concept of how people, like parents who have very young kids, as young as 18 months old, even 1 year old, they can even purchase the product. They can just download the material and they can actually start reading to their kiddos, and they can start learning the language really early. This actually helps in so many different ways. It helps by if you learn English early, eventually you're going to be ahead of your peers. And especially if you learn how to do it the right way, especially if you learn how to pronounce things right, it'll set you up in the future where you can like much more easily be able to go through school and get a better grade.
The world is kind of filled with numerous educational resources now. So what do you think sets children learning reading apart from others?
One of the things that sets them apart is like how they have an emphasis on how they teach the phonics. I can't quite pronounce it. But it's a complex word. But it teaches them how to like actually pronounce. So like it kind of, instead of just telling you to like read the whole letter, it goes like cat. So it goes by that strategy of actually like trying to pronounce the word by breaking it up versus the whole letter approach, because they make that comparison is that English is not Chinese. Do not try to learn English the way you would try to learn Chinese. That's not going to help you. So that's just kind of the comparison that they make. And I truly believe that this actually might be like a really effective product. I mean, I tried advertising on Facebook. They just ripped me off. They just took my $4,000. Oh. I mean, it took me a long time to make that much money, but I'm hoping that by having this interview, I can actually start getting sales. And part of the reason, like, why I'm trying to get sales is like, obviously, I want to make a living because, like, especially with the work environment today, especially with the cancel culture and stuff, it's very easy for someone to, like, easily be out of a job. So I want to always have a constant stream of income, and I want to make this business that I started big enough so that way I end up going into like the stock market. Like I've actually traded shares before, so I can start buying out certain news companies. That would be my favorite things, kind of like what Elon Musk did.
Yeah.
So in a way, this is kind of like a fundraiser. So like if people like start buying my stuff, I start making money, and if I save up enough, I can start buying out these news, and they'll stop giving off these fake information to people. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like there was like this one interview where President Trump was being interviewed by an anchor in CNN. She just kept interrupting him the entire time. That's when you know that they're trying to set a narrative, is when they keep interrupting instead of letting the guy speak. Like even you, or even like when you see Tucker Carlson interview, you see them basically like they just sit back and let the person talk. And speaking of like shares and everything, like one of the ideas I had in mind is like if once this amendment of mine gets ratified, like you need 67 votes in the Senate, 290 in the House, and 3/4 of the states, so 30 of the states ratifying in their state legislatures. Once this get ratified, I had an idea where, you know, like gold is $2,000 an ounce. You know, money is pegged on gold. Gold used to be $20 an ounce. So I was thinking, like, if I ever meet up with Trump, why don't we just like slam it back down to just $20 an ounce? So if you have $1, you can purchase $100 worth of stuff with that. And if you could set up a bill, so if you have like $100,000 loan, you now owe like $1,000 instead. Yeah. So, but you still get to keep the amount of cash you have. Yeah. So you can just use your cash, pay it off, and you fix America's economy. No more running on debt.
Yeah, clever.
That's one of like the big picture ideas I have in mind. You have to understand, like, once you read my book, like I think everything I do, everything I say has a meaning. If there's a reason behind why I'm doing what I'm doing, or saying what I'm saying. Imagine doing that. That just like completely, that's like the reset button, but without taking things apart. It's just like, oh no, now I'm rich now.
Yes. Well, are you working on any other projects at the moment, or anything else that's coming up?
As of right now, no. I'm just trying to, at this moment, like trying to get through college and even make some money, because like last year, there's this program called FAFSA that actually paid for my college. This year, because like my parents made just tidbit more money because we sold off like one of our houses, now we have to pay the whole thing. This is ridiculous. $30,000 like for an education. You could buy a car with that.
Yeah.
Actually, you could buy a car with much less back in the old day. And $30,000, that's like the down payment for a house. I'm like, this is ridiculous how the prices are. another and another thing is like if we actually like reduce the price of gold to $20 an ounce, that would also cause like a lot of stocks to go down. This actually makes it easier to buy out certain companies. So that would be like it'll technically crash the market, but it will crash it in such a way that the people for once get rich, not the guys on Wall Street.
Yes. Well, where are we able to go to find your book and children learning reading and everything that you'd want us to find?
Okay, so if you want to purchase children learning reading through my link so that way I can get money, just go to literacybuilders.net and then you can just click on the button and it will go straight to their website and you can just purchase the book. Whereas like for the Amazon book, there's a link, but you can also like go straight into Amazon and type in the title of my book, and you should be able to see my book and just be able to buy it. I have the ebook, I have the paperback, and even the hardcover. I actually even sent you the link myself, so
yes.
You can show it. You can show that link to everyone, and people can actually start buying that book. Like, and believe me, it's a very good read. Like even like the more controversial stuff in section 3 and 5, at first you might be like outraged, like this guy's such a sexist. But when you really look at the thought I put behind into it, then you realize, oh, this guy, it makes sense what he's saying, even though like I've been raised to think different, but this guy actually makes sense for once.
Yeah.
You can at least appreciate the fact that it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, many thanks for talking to us today. It's been great having you here.
Yeah, thank you as well. You don't know how much this means for me. And hopefully we can both walk out prosperous together.
Yes.
Like, you obviously make money through your show, and then I also get to make money now through you, like promoting me. I guess hopefully that we both become prosperous together.